Have you ever heard of the show Miss Mosaic from Nickelodeon in 2002? The chances that you have are very slim, because the show was cancelled after airing just 6 20-minute episodes. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me explain. Miss Mosaic is an educational children's show. Please keep in mind that this isn't one of those cliched lost episode crap stories that is the static and blood and gore and blah blah blah. Miss Mosaic isn't even close to having those cheesy horror stories you'd find scattered across the internet. And I'm certainly not begging for you to believe me and all of that crap. If you want, look it up. Miss Mosaic is a woman, obviously, who is made out of small colored square stones. It wasn't animated, mind you, it was a stop motion. Miss Mosaic would elegantly move along and dance, and her voice was quite entirely an angel chorus. She wore sky blue belly dancer-like clothes and had golden jewels decorating her graceful body. Her caramel skin had seemed to shine even more out of all the other small stones. Her eyes were that of a deep dark blue sea, and her voice was sequenced, followed each word poured out of her lips perfectly. Even if you hate the educational shows, you have been in awe of how the show was done with utmost care. It seemed to have been cherished by the employees who worked on it. Nevertheless, the show seemed extremely entertaining for ages between 3 and 12. In fact, parents reported that their children were addicted to the show. Parents would claim that their child would soon gain great knowledge, and immediately that the show skyrocketed to the top of the list. So why would they cancel the show? It was perfectly produced. The artwork of Miss Mosaic was stunning, and the music was absolutely great. Miss Mosaic would teach children fun math problems and then had them sing with her while she dances and jumping. Like I said before, there isn't any violent graphic scenes or static that appears in the show. In fact, none of the stones seem to have the color red on them. And around episode 4, the popularity of Miss Mosaic was booming and was still growing. All the reviews have 5 stars and always holding similar descriptions. Wow, my daughter loves this, or my kids don't even watch cartoons, they just read books all the time, and so on and so forth. After episode 4, parents started to show concern. Families were calling Nickelodeon, complaining that their child only spoke about topics such as science. Now, you may ask, how is that a bad thing? Well, the parents of the children continued saying that their child would gaze at their food and not even take a small bite out of it, and began murmuring words, and the child's voice would soon grow louder and louder until the parents could hear it clearly. The child could be rambling about gravity and human anatomy, and even say things about many heartbeats we might have left until we disturbingly enough die. The child would tell this to his or her parents on how many breaths we take when we sleep, and the list goes on. The child would speak gibberish that even most intellectual parents didn't understand. The child would continue this for about a minute before shutting their mouth completely. Just like that. Not what you expect, right? You'd probably thought the child was going to start screaming at the top of their lungs and their eyes would be crying blood or something like that. No, they just stopped and went back to normal. Yes, the child went back to his or her average self, but when their parents asked about what their outburst was, they would only reply with a small smile, nod, and would only say the few words, "Miss Mosaic taught me." Whenever the parents would ask this again, the child would ignore the topic entirely. Majority of Nickelodeon had already thought about canceling the show, but of course you have the assholes that work for Nickelodeon. Unfortunately, these good-for-nothing jerks will rant about it and bash on the creator until they drive him or her to insanity. It seemed that all the other employees went along with it. I'll admit Nickelodeon did pull a douchey move, and that they also pulled another one. They also complained about their website that calls never occurred. Yes, they completely pulled the incidents in the back of their minds, but there was only one around 20 casual, unusual calls about the children's outbursts. So, of course, dull-minded fans believed in Nickelodeon's lies. If there wasn't anything calls like that, the show would have continued like nothing ever happened. Even the employees seemed to believe the incident never happened. Due to the lack of conversation about Miss Mosaic would be aired on Nickelodeon national television every Wednesday, and barely caused any money because Miss Mosaic's set was a medium budget, due to the fact that there was only a camera pointed towards Miss Mosaic and Mosaic's sky around her. That was just it. Of course, there will always be hundreds and hundreds of frames to put together as such, but nonetheless, the animators enjoyed it. The voice actor for Miss Mosaic was happy with her job, and everything seemed to be perfect. Episode 5 was just like any other episode, where Miss Mosaic taught the young viewers how to twirl and sing ABCs. Mind you that, of course, adults would sit in the room and watch the show with their kid. Adults claim that Miss Mosaic said these words, "Let's play hide and seek." She would gleefully yell, and the children would often hide somewhere in the room, usually in a nook or cranny. A big smile plastered on their faces as they peered out from their hiding spots to see Miss Mosaic hiding around the screen. Searching for the hider, she would be completely obvious to the adult or teenager present in the room. In fact, it seemed that she had tried her very best not to even look at the people from ages 13 and above. Then after a few minutes, she would often open her mouth to say, "Gotcha!" She would say it in a victorious tone as she pointed towards the hiding spot of the child. The child would proceed to come out of their hiding spot, and the show would go again like normal. If you didn't analyze what I just said, let's overview it quickly. How did Miss Mosaic knew where the child was hiding? Miss Mosaic began gathering horror garces everywhere after that. The rumors and the stories were spreading like the plague. These occurrences were the show just like two. Strange and out of this world. For those who only words can describe the show. There were at least 2 countless stories about Miss Mosaic who come out of the TV and brutally murder the children. No one believed the hide-and-seek scene, except for the people who actually saw the episode, which surprisingly had very little. Miss Mosaic played very early, mind you, and the adults were probably getting ready for the next day of work. Even then, I noticed Miss Mosaic played on the days where children didn't have to go to school, or when their families were busy working. Miss Mosaic was quickly becoming famous in the horror community. Again, everything went back to normal. The episode only aired once, and for some reason, I never really knew why they only played one episode every Wednesday. When the episode 6 finally came out after a long wait, and curious minds wanted to investigate, didn't miss the opportunity to watch an episode of Miss Mosaic, because they fully knew that they only had one chance of viewing the episode. Midway through the episode, Miss Mosaic halted in her tracks, and so did the children. She just stood there and stared at the children. She wasn't completely motionless, just like in real life when someone is staring at someone else. Their faces twitched, and their eyes drift around, and the eyebrows were moving slightly. That's what Miss Mosaic was doing, and at this point the elder people in the room became more concerned by her, and the fact that their child was just standing there, eyes fixated on the screen. There was even cases where the child was originally sitting down watching the show when Miss Mosaic mysteriously stopped. The child's expression would drop as they stand up. Miss Mosaic's eyes started darting around the room to see if she was staring at thousands of viewers at the same time. She would purse her lips and then clamp her jaw shut. Suddenly and slowly her neutral expression would turn into a frown, and her mouth would slowly open, revealing rotten, sickly yellow teeth, which she did not have before. She would often then try to crack her neck, not in a humane way. She did the same of her emotions when we wake up in the morning, moving our heads and shoulders around in an attempt to crack our cramped necks. After she did that, there was a loud, sickening crack. She gritted her teeth, scraping them against each other as she began stretching her body, the most crooked way possible, yet she kept the intelligence of her movements were those of a snake. She trembled very slowly at the small mosaic stories paint chipped off and become dull, revealing a thin, cracked stones beneath those once colorful patterns. By now she had a look of pure anger now formed on her pale face. Her cheeks were shrunken and her eyes were slightly swollen and bloodshot. The children were still locked in their place. The soundtrack for the show was barely audible, and there was even a pain in her eyes. Finally, with a snap of her neck, she smiled, or at least she tried to. Her broken, parched lips made the smiling look painful. She tilted her head and said in the normal soft voice, "Miss Mosaic's daily lesson. How to heal sick people," she joyfully announced. The children who were once frozen would suddenly start laughing and jumping. Miss Mosaic would instruct the kid to poke on their forehead, and she still kept her decay appearance along the way, so you can imagine that the older person who was present was absolutely terrified to the brim. However, witness claimed that an unknown force made their muscles clench and knot form in their stomachs and squeezed. If they had tried to stand up or run towards to get the child out of there, they couldn't. If they tried, their bodies would feel strained. Finally, when the children poked Miss Mosaic's head, with a split second, she reverted back to her normal appearance. The children didn't get sucked in or anything like that. Miss Mosaic was indeed healed. After that, the people from age 13 and above will go back to fully control. And this time Nickelodeon couldn't even try to ignore this incident or cover it up like before. Phone calls kept flooding Nickelodeon studios. They officially knew that Miss Mosaic was screwed. However, they admitted that no one made Miss Mosaic do these things. The healing scene, that was 11 minutes and 36 seconds length, when Nickelodeon staff went into the period of time for the episode to check. Nothing odd showed up, even though they had proved that this scene never happened. They still had no choice but to shut down Miss Mosaic due to the lack of viewership and demanding parents. And just like that, the show went off air. Sure, people still talked about it, but it seemed that Miss Mosaic went to the back of their minds, and of course, horror stories would cover Miss Mosaic so completely that everyone thought it was just a hoax. Nickelodeon had also had countless arrays of new shows to air anyway, so they had no problem with losing one show. One of my friends who was a victim to Miss Mosaic had watched their daughter stand and poke at the forehead that seemed to be a monster. But she told me that her daughter never spoke of Miss Mosaic again. And she told me the one thing I cannot forget. At first I thought she was joking, but look sincerely on her face, she told me otherwise. She said that one night when she was going back home from the other day of work, she fell a small brown bumpy sharp hill and got injured in the process. Once she was home, her husband immediately put her in bed, and she was bedridden. But when she fell asleep, she told me she woke up in the middle of the night. She told me in that in dimly lit, illuminated room by the moonlight, she could see a figure of their daughter holding up one finger, another hand dangling loosely, and she could even vaguely make out the shape of a bottle of pills in her hand. And that, my little pretties, was Little or Miss Mosaic, a lost Nickelodeon creepypasta. My final thoughts on the story. I actually kind of remember Shadow Reader narrated this story at one point, like a long time ago. It was back on his old channel before it got terminated. But I definitely would have to say, not a bad creepypasta. I mean, the concept of it seemed nice and all that, but there is a couple things that I just wanted to, get out of my way and say it. Now, I don't think I ever read this story, in 2019. Don't think I ever did. And the same could be said for, now. I've never read this story, so I decided to go ahead and take a look at it. And I mean, the concept of it seemed nice. Like, I do think it's pretty nice, with the whole concept of its own self. I mean, I found it to have, like, a pretty good plot line. Not cliched or anything like that. Not like your typical Lost episode pastas, which, I mean, it's not cliched or anything. Well, maybe there might have been, I'm gonna have to, skim through this story just to, while I'm reviewing, just to, keep stuff in mind. The beginning part of it seemed, it seemed a little bit confusing. Like, have you ever watched Little Miss Mosaic or something like that? I mean, it kind of started to get a bit confusing, at least to the beginning part of it. I mean, I was kind of confused about it because, well, one, it just kind of didn't really explain so much, but yeah, I mean, I never read this story. I'm surprised that this story is on the regular Creepypasta Wiki. I mean, I'm still surprised that it's still up there. Like, no joke. I am surprised that this is still up on the Creepypasta Wiki. I thought it got taken down or something, but it didn't, so that's actually a shocker. Well, I think it's pretty good that I've seen this on the Creepypasta Wiki. But other than that, the beginning part of the story was okay. Like, well, actually, it was decent to me. Maybe it might be okay to some of you guys, but I find it to be decent, at least to my honest opinion. I mean, I believe there were a few grammatical errors in the story. I did spot maybe just a few grammatical errors. But despite that, I honestly really thought that the concept actually seemed pretty good, especially with the pasta with its own self. But mentioning creepypasta cliches in a creepypasta is it doesn't really sit well with me. I mean, it doesn't really work for your story saying, oh, there's blood, gore, anything like that. Like, I mean, I know in some pastas, I know other ones I did use kind of something like that, but at least they used it in a way that could help out. But in this one, no, I don't really know. It just didn't sit well with me. Maybe there was some reason why it didn't sit well with me, but I can't seem to figure that out right now. But maybe you guys could comment in the comments below if you read this story and see what you guys think. But yeah, mentioning creepypasta cliches in a creepypasta, it doesn't really work. I'm going to be honest, people. It just doesn't work for me or anyone else for that matter. But not to mention that, the creepypasta cliches not only were mentioned in the beginning, but they were mentioned throughout the story, which I did not really think that worked, and that just didn't work for me. I mean, I know some stories, have done that managed to work, somewhat good, or at least they try to. But it did, in this story, though, it just doesn't work. And I'm being honest. I really am surprised that this story is still on the Creepypasta Wiki. I thought it was taken down from it, but I'm surprised it's still on the Creepypasta Wiki. I know I'm repeating myself, but still. But yeah, I also really want to say the ending of it wasn't really that satisfying to me. I mean, it just dumps a bunch of things that didn't really make sense. The continuous mentioning of cliches in lost episodes didn't really work with this story, and that's the reason why I find this story to, have a decent plotline in that, but it just went downhill. The grammar, it was all right. Like, I mean, the grammar does need improvement though, but the sentence structure was okay. I mean, I did spot a few run-on sentences in the story that could be, improved, but I would really like to see, the ending being better, the lost episode cliches being mentioned continuously in the story to be seized, which means like none at all. So then that way the story would, be a little more improvement. I would really like to see maybe a rewrite of this, but that would be depending on this. Now, I don't know who the original author of this story is, so I'm going to leave it as anonymous for now. If I ever find out who the original author of the story is, I'll be sure to sit there and give the author proper credit. For now, I'm just going to leave it as anonymous until if the author finds, this story in the comment section, lets me know that they're the ones who wrote the story, I'll be sure to give them proper credit then. That's all I can really say. But the story was decent, was okay, but could use improvement. I mean, that's just from what I've seen personally. But, the fact that Miss Mosaic turns into like some sort of zombie thing or something, I mean, it wasn't really necessary, as well as the mentioning of Lost episode creepypasta cliches and that. So, yeah. That's the reason why the story is just like that. Okay. Another thing I'm going to have to say was that there does need to be improvement with the story itself. And that's just me. But maybe you guys have like, I don't know, maybe some suggestions or something, or maybe you guys can, I don't know, maybe figure out something. I don't really know, to be honest. But yeah, I guess with that being said, with that being the case, it's not a bad story. It does need improvement, but other than that, it's not a bad story. That's something I can definitely say. So, I guess with that being the case, and with that being said, like I'm just gonna say, this is just my own opinion. You happen to disagree with me, that is perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas. This is my own personal thoughts. I'm gonna give this story a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad creepypasta, not great, but not terrible. I thought it was decent, but it's just the mention of creepypasta cliches being mentioned continuously does not work with the story. The grammar needs to be fixed up, as, there were grammatical errors a couple times. Maybe more than one. Maybe more than that. I don't know. Run-on sentences need to be fixed up, as well as, the ending needs to be better. There needs to be a better ending. And I mean, I can say that it has a really good, interesting concept. And I'll give the author benefit of the doubt that it was an attempt to make something new, but it does need improvement. That's all I can really say. With that being said, what did you guys think? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done to personally help make this story a lot better. Feel free to leave me your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you're new to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because I make brand new videos every single day. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out. And as always, please roll the outro, because I'm out.